everybody falls behind when they don't go to school in person. But there are certain kids who are more vulnerable and at greater risk of falling behind. Kids who live in poverty, kids who don't have a great support structure at home, kids who might not have great internet at home, kids with learning differences, kids with developmental differing abilities. This is an equity issue at its core. Someone asked me the other day, Governor, you seem like you care so much about getting the kids in school. Why is it? Because I think every child deserves a chance. And a public school and a public education is often the only chance for most children. And getting them in school and giving them a high quality education is the best thing we can do. And it's a lot of talk these days about equity. Education is equity. And I certainly know the folks on my Zoom call here have devoted their lives to that. For our part, we're doing very aggressive testing. Every kid can get tested in a day if they feel sick. A very aggressive contact tracing, providing extra masks and cleaning supplies and fans and HEPA filters to schools. We want to do everything we can to give parents and teachers and students confidence that it's safe to go back to school. So that's where we are as we are sitting here September 3rd, and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good about where we are as a state, and I'm feeling very, very, very grateful for the hard work of everybody out there who's trying their best for our children. So with that, we're going to do what we always do, ask a few questions, have a discussion, and I'm going to kick it off with you, Secretary Jones, Wamzetta. Question for you. For those of you not on the call, Wamzetta oversees all of DCYF, all of our children's mental health, all of Department of Human Services, food stamps, cash assistance, right on the front lines with many of Rhode Island's most vulnerable kids, the training school, juvenile justice, the whole thing. So, Secretary Jones, who do you think is going to be struggling as we juggle this mix of in-person and at-home learning? And what do you think we all ought to be doing to help these most vulnerable kids who might be struggling?
Well, Governor, thanks for having me on your Facebook Live broadcast today, first and foremost, I have to say. And in response to that question, when you say who and struggling, I think all of us are struggling. And our children and others who are vulnerable are struggling the most. And when I say children, I'm talking from preschool all the way up through, senior year in high school, no difference. There is a struggle across the board. There's a struggle for parents. And you have even more of a struggle, in my opinion, especially in our communities of color, where we know for a fact education is our true golden ticket to having the life that we deserve to have. And so with knowing that, it's also that struggle of how do I get my kids in school? How do I, do that ease back? How do I get myself back to work so I can support us and my kids in school? So I think that we're all struggling, but every single child and every single family should have a choice. And that's one of the definitely foundations of what I talk about, my mission and my vision and health and human services. We have to give people a choice. We have to use a racial equity lens, and we have to fully engage all community, not just some, and try to ensure that they all of us have what it is that we need and we want to be able to make it during this pandemic and beyond the pandemic.
Yeah, it is so true. Superintendent Peters, you have said, I've heard you say, quote, "We prioritized in-person learning because it matters." Now you have a big job. I do not envy you. I have a tough job, yours is tougher. You're going with the partial in person, but just talk to us. Why do you say in-person teaching matters? And how are you doing it in Providence?
So thanks, Governor, again, for having us. Really excited. And in-person teaching absolutely matters. And I also frequently say that students don't get a COVID pass. 3-4 years from now, when our our high school students are sitting in the admissions office at Brown University or somewhere else. They're not going to be able to look at that college and career counselor and say, hey, I get a pass because I went to school during COVID. So we're not going to be able to give our students a COVID pass. We have to educate them at all costs. With that in mind, I appreciate just the science and the data that guided the decision to allowing us a partial reopening. We really appreciate that. And we appreciate the cautious approach. Part of our design principles was that we were going to lead with safety first. At our elementary students, we will return to full-time in-person learning, but we're going to stagger the start dates so that our young babies can get acclimated to the new protocols, the stable pods, masks wearing, understanding the additional hand washing and sanitizing that goes with the full day of school. So obviously on Monday, September 14th, grades pre-K and first grade will return. On Thursday, the 17th, grades 2 and grades 3 will return. And then the following Monday, September 21st, 4th and 5th graders. So we've given a really what we believe strategic phased return for our elementary students. For those who do not return on the 14th, Governor, they will be on distance learning until they come back in person. And then that takes us to middle school. So our middle school students will follow a partial reopening plan. We've divided all of our students into 2 groups, Group A and Group B, and they will alternate days because we want to keep building capacity at about 50%. We are staggering the starts for those students as well. So we'll start off with 6th grade on September 14th and 7th grade on September 28th, and then 8th grade on October 13th. We'll follow a similar cadence at the high school level, 50% capacity, Group A, Group B, 9th grade, starting at September 14th, 10th grade, September 28th, and then 11th grade and 12th grade on October 13th. You'll also notice, Governor, that we've prioritized our 6th and our 9th grade because those are very critical transition years. And also our special needs students, our students that are differently abled, and our multilingual learners have been proven through number of data points, Johns Hopkins report, that we've not done right by them. And we've prioritized and are prioritizing them as well. So happy about that. And I guess my final piece would be our virtual academy. We've heard a number of our families want a 100% remote option, and we've been able to stand that up. Currently, we've got about 6,500 students enrolled. And if you put that in the context of Rhode Island, we would be the 5th school district in the state. So not only do we have the largest school district, we have the 5th largest school district in the state. But we're happy to bring that option to parents. We're getting ready to heavily dilute the market with information with our communications engagement strategy. They're hungry for information. We miss them. We want to get them back, but want parents to know and be very, very understanding that we are ready for our students. We've worked hard and we miss them dearly.
Yeah, good job, Harrison. 6,500 students, you said? Is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am. About 6,500.
That's a lot of kids. Okay, well, God bless you. You have your hands full.
So, Secretary Jones, I'm excited question because I know that you work with a lot of community leaders of color and particularly in districts that have been heavily impacted by COVID-19. What are you hearing those needs are? What are you hearing what gaps exist that are furthered by our students and the inequities we're seeing?
I am and have been very, very fortunate to be working within all of our communities. And we have an equity council, in fact, that's made up of leaders within our communities of color. All of our communities of color are represented on this equity council, and it's an advisory council, and it's been extremely helpful and impactful, and with setting up much, testing being one. But what I'm definitely hearing a lot about, most notably in our communities, of our high density communities, our communities of color, is that this pandemic obviously has disproportionately impacted our communities of color, and it's really rooted and based in systemic historic racism. And COVID-19 just shined an even brighter light on those inequities that have existed for 400 years easily. And what I'm hearing them really talk about is housing, employment, And when we say housing, affordable housing, appropriate housing, good housing, employment, livable wage, not just a job, but livable wages. And then transportation remains a big concern, obviously, and childcare, because many within our communities work in settings that they are essential staff. If they're not there, those hospitals are not going to keep running. You can't have surgeries without all of those other proper precautions, and our communities are taking care of those precautions. Access to quality health care, not just saying I have insurance, but quality and accessibility. Mental health supports for our children as well as our adults. Some just think about our children, adults, but this is a big piece for our kids. And then, you also have to look at those chemical or substance use needs to be able to access substance use treatment. So hearing a lot about that, and then it all spins right into education, because education is critical. Everyone wants their kids to go to school and to have a great education, and they want them to be safe. And they know that without that education, my kid doesn't stand a chance, not in the grand scheme. So it so interconnects, and people don't recognize that. When you say health inequities, well, education inequities, it just all keeps feeding into each other. So I'm hearing a lot about that. And also with the governor's leadership, we've been able to do so much that we can show it's safe. Governor, you've been on it about data, proof. Don't just tell me something, prove it to me, because we want to make sure everybody's safe, from, knocking it off, wear your mask, social distance. That's been instrumental in helping us get to where we're at now, but we have a lot more to do.